All right, welcome back for another episode of Last to Know. This is a selection of final issues, those last issues in a series that may be worth a little bit more than you might expect. While some of these may only be worth a few bucks here or there, some of these can be very, very expensive. And it's always good to know the last issues in a lot of these runs because they may not be some round number like a 10 or 12 or anything like that. They could be just a random issue, 67, 64, just a random ending that may have been unplanned at the time that, due to a lower end print run may cause some of these books to be worth, like I said, a few bucks more than you might actually expect. Hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. And if you want to see this week's selection of last issues to know, just hang up for a few seconds after the intro and I will be right back. All right, let's, get right to it with these final issues that you need to be aware of when you're out there digging and hunting for your comics. Whether you're digging in dollar boxes, cheap boxes, just regular old back issue bins, like I said, these are some final issues that I think are worth knowing and worth being aware of when you're out there doing your digging. Now, try to group these as best that I could. We're going to be doing some more nostalgic type properties for the most part throughout today's show. So let's see what we got here with our first group and our first selection of books, starting off with very popular Thundercats. Yes, this is the final of that Marvel Thundercats run at issue 24. You got Kit and Kat, or whatever the heck their names were. I remember those two little tykes there of part of the team. But this issue 24 is the final issue of the Marvel run from back in the day. This book sells on an average these days of only about $20 to $50. It was much more expensive at one time back when Thundercats was being more speculated on, etc. Granted, still rumors of something coming here or there, but this one's kind of been up and down that spec cycle along with the issue one. So like the issue one, this one also follows that kind of same trend. So right now it might be more of in a dip, but still 20 to 50 bucks on an average sale still ain't bad. And when you look at the average listings, it can still be listed from anywhere from $50 to $100 for this final issue. Yes, some people might ask for a little bit more for a newsstand for one reason or another because people like collecting newsstands, even though it may not be harder to find because of the time when this book came out, but they still want to pay a premium for it. With that said, for context, how many 9.8s do we have of this issue? Well, we've only got 19 in the CGC census, so that's not a ton, but it's still not nothing. So there are, a handful of books there that people did get graded for this final issue of the series as issue 24, but it's still worth keeping an eye on because, again, this thing could sell for upwards of $50 to $100, as you can see. With that said, let's stick with these 80 nostalgic cartoon properties and check out Transformers. Now, this isn't the first run of Transformers. This is Generation 2, I think, or Transformers Generation 2. This was only a series that lasted 12 issues, so this is the 12th and final issue of the run. And this thing, well, I couldn't find a recent sale to give you any sort of context right now, but I can tell you that average listings can be quite a bit, $65 to $75. People are seeking for this book. So even though one hasn't sold in the last 3 months, this book, it's got a high asking price at $65 to $75. So if you can dig one out, you may have found yourself a nice little treasure there. As far as I said, with the CGC context goes, we've only got a dozen of these graded. So it's issue 12. We've got 12 graded. How about that for being symmetrical? Kind of fun, kind of interesting. But while we're looking at Generation 2, I guess we might as well go back and look at the OG original series from Marvel. This is the original Marvel series that ended at issue 80 as part of this 4-issue limited series with this epic conclusion to all these headmasters and whatnot. But this final issue can sell pretty well here, as you can see, going for $40 to $60 on average sales. Once again, this one had a higher ceiling before. It's kind of come down a little bit in recent years, but it didn't come down so much that asking prices aren't still where they used to be, looking for $75 up to $150 for this book. That's a big chunk of change for this final issue. And again, the last few issues of this run are all pretty tough, but this one kind of standing out from the pack as being the last and final issue at number 80. And again, CGC census goes 125. So a decent number in the census for this book, but one that is worth keeping an eye on if you're out there going to hunt for. And if you find a nice, quality copy, maybe think about getting it graded. Sorry for that quick little pause, but I don't know if you heard that beeping while I was recording the beginning of the show, but that apparently was my carbon monoxide detector telling me that it's at the end of its life cycle. Interesting. It had a 5-beep system to let you know when it's no longer working properly. So, fun fact, I got to get a new carbon monoxide alert. But with that said, we're going to move the show on and continue on in this range of nostalgia and look at one of my favorites. Again, you guys know I'm a fan of Transformers, but I'm also a big fan of G.I. Joe. So yes, many of you mentioned this book as well in my last video in the comments. Yes, G.I. Joe 155, the final issue of the original Marvel Comics run. IDW and I think even like Devils do eventually pick this up to kind of continue the story at different points, but this is the OG ending for the Marvel run at 155. And again, this one does quite well for itself, even still. Average sales for this particular book right now are $85 to $200. That's right. G.I. Joe 155, $85 to $200 average sales. Average listings, $275 to $400 raw, folks. That's a big number. This book has gone up over the years. This was always pretty pricey. This was always around like $100 for the last few years, but now it's getting some big bucks. With that said, there are a decent number in the census, just like the Transformers book. We have 161 9.8s right now for this G.I. Joe 155, but that hasn't stopped those big sales and those big prices, because, again, those were raw prices. Graded, that's a different story. Now, with that said, before we move on to our next little chunk of books, which are more nostalgia related, but at a different venue, let me remind any of you out there who need supplies. You need bags, you need boards, long boxes, short boxes. BCW's got you covered. Use my code RENA10 for 10% off your entire order. Get your bags, your boards, your CGC boxes, your long boxes, your pages for cards, top loaders for comics, etc. Save 10% off the entire thing by using my code RENA10. Now, moving on, let's go more to the Disney kind of side of things and check out Uncle Scrooge. Of all things, yes, Uncle Scrooge had a final issue from that Gladstone run. This is issue 318. 318, and granted, this won't seem very impressive to you because sometimes some books like this, they don't know what they're buying, and this is the only one that's sold for the last few months. Yeah, one sold for all of. Is that important? Well, it's actually a deal. Because if you look at the other listings out there right now, this book technically and usually goes for more of $25 to $50 plus. Yes, there's like a $100 listing of this as well, but by and large, most of the listings are $25 to $50. So while one person did manage to get this for like $5, more often than not, this thing goes for much more than that. So that's why I try to give you both the sale and the asking prices so you can kind of find, your middle ground when you're digging and you decide what you want to do, depending on how much you find this book for. Because say you find this Uncle Scrooge book at a shop for $10. Do you want to buy it or do you want to leave it? That's your call. It's your money. You just look at the pricing here and you decide what you want to do with that Uncle Scrooge 318. With that said, not a lot in the census. Only 11 for this one in CGC 9.8. So keep that in mind as well. Not a lot of graded copies of this particular Gladstone book. Now, sticking with the more offbeat kind of a comic book here, another book that you guys mentioned in the comments from the last show, Groo. Yep, I remember. I've always looked for this one as well. Groo the Wanderer ran for a whopping 120 issues before the end, but issue 120 is the end from Marvel/Epic Comics. This book still does well. I believe it had higher highs, but for right now, still averaging about $40 to $60 as far as sales go for this final issue. Granted, the rest of the issues don't do this well. It's the final issue that kind of commands this extra premium with average listings looking for $50 to $70. So once again, last issue, if you can find it, keep an eye out for that Groo 120. And as far as graded copies go, a decent amount, because like I said, people know about this book. This is not a secret. Like a few of you brought it up in the comments, but 42 in the 9.8 in the CGC census currently. So not a small number, but not a ton either. With that said, we're going to keep it weird, and we're going to look at Howard the Duck, the original Marvel run. Ending at issue number 33, all new 30-page epic, The Material Duck, final of that, like I said, that first Howard the Duck run. This book, again, maybe not as pricey as Sarah G.I. Joe book, but still, it can sell for about 15 to 40 bucks, depending on condition, depending on timing, etc. 15 to 40 bucks. As far as listings go, well, kind of in that same sort of range, 20 to 40 is what people are looking for. So again, nice little find if you can find it for cheap, because, you know, you've run into some Howard the Duck old books, and like I said, not every Howard the Duck issue is worth something. This is the final issue. So the final issue oftentimes commands a bit of a premium. So knowing that number, and again, it's not a common number. It's issue 33. It's Rolling Rock. It's you know, it's how you finish your journalism entries. 33 at the end. With that said, I've still got 13 in the CGC census for this particular book. For context, if you want to know how many people get this thing graded, not that many. And to wrap us up here in this sort of oddball Disney sort of segment, let's take a look at this Disney Afternoon comic book. Yeah, Marvel printed this oddball Disney Afternoon comic book that kind of told some tales from the Disney Afternoon cartoons. You know, your Chippendales, your DuckTales, etc. But here we had Darkwing Duck, the masked mallard nose, here on the final issue of this series that ended at number 10. I think they planned for this to go longer, but it just kind of ended. So at number 10, Darkwing Duck there on the cover. This thing sells not bad. You can get 20 to 50 bucks average sales recently. Average listings looking for more like 40 to 60. So not too bad if you can find this, you know, again, Darkwing. It's not even Darkwing Duck comic. He's in it, but this is a Disney Afternoon, you know, comic book. Nobody decided to get this thing, well, I shouldn't say nobody decided to get it graded. Nobody got a 9.8 yet, because there is a 9.6 as the highest graded copy. But maybe you could find the first 9.8 out there if you go out there and digging. So take a shot. Who knows? Maybe you can get that book. Now, before we get to our final segment, and sorry if I'm a little off, a little distracted, but it's a busy week trying to get this thing done. And like I said, stupid carbon monoxide alert thing kind of threw me off and has me a little on edge here. Despite everything's all right. Again, it just I checked the alert. The alert tells me that the thing's not working anymore. So with that said, Whatnot. Any of you out there who haven't tried Whatnot before, now's your chance. Use my link down below to sign up and get yourselves a free $15 off your first purchase to buy whatever you want from whomever you want. No strings attached. You try out the app, you get 15 bucks off your first purchase if you haven't done so already. You help out the channel, you get yourself, you know, something nice for 15 bucks or a discount off of something even more expensive. So do what you want with it. Just give it a try. You got nothing to lose. Now, with that said, in our final segment, we've got some more sort of 90s movie cartoony sort of things that still kind of fit the vibe we've got going here. And we're looking at Batman Adventures. So sort of like the Batman the Animated Series, it is Batman Adventures, but a different run of that series. And it ended at number 17. So with this series, not as many people is on board for this one. So we've got no actual sales to go for recently. However, asking prices, much like that Transformer book that I had earlier, even though none sold, doesn't mean it's worthless, because the asking price on this one is about 50 bucks. About 50 bucks for this one. And there are not that many graded in the CGC census, with only 3. So look for this Batman Adventures number 17, because, yeah, you might do well for yourself if you can find it. Just saying. Also saying, you guys remember that weird Robert Townsend superhero movie from the 90s, Meteor Man? Well, not only was it a movie, they also made a 6-issue comic series, and that number 6 is a book you want to keep an eye out for. So look for that Marvel Comics Meteor Man number 6, because it's worth your time. Sure, recent sales may not be that impressive, as it can go as cheap as $5 all the way up to $35. But by and large, this thing has been kind of pricey for a while now, and even the asks are pretty widespread, as people are seeking anywhere from $20 to $40 and up. And then some of those up are getting close to that triple-digit mark, because, well, it's not that easy to find, and it's one of those oddball books. So, again, I'm not telling you to go spend $20 to $40 for this Meteor Man 6. I'm saying that's what people are asking for it. That's what some people are paying for it. So, you go and find it out there for cheaper than that. Maybe you found yourself a nice little book, you know? Just knowing some of this stuff is very helpful when you're out there digging. So Maybe you can also find that first 9.8 copy, because I couldn't find any, and I couldn't find any graded at all for this particular issue. So unlike the other book that did have a 9.6, this one I couldn't find anything. So who knows? Maybe you'll have the first Meteor Man number 6, 9.8. You thought that was a strange book. Well, Marvel also decided to do a comic book series based off of the popular rap duo who also had some fun movies like House Party and Class Act, Kid and Play. That's right. There was a Kid and Play comic series for a short time, but it ended very quickly at issue number 9. The other issues were by and large just Kid and Play adventures, but here at the end, they brought in the Marvel Universe to kind of mix it up with the fellas. So issue number 9, as you can see here, a lot of Marvel characters get starring here. This one, I always look for this. I always look for the first issue too, because it's just one of those fun little things. I remember Kid and Play quite vividly. Like House Party was a classic. It still is a classic. But this particular issue, issue number 9, can sell for around $30 these days. It used to sell for more, but that's where it is right about now. And average listings are more like $40 to $150. That's right. I'm telling you, some of these books have some crazy asking prices and some crazy histories behind them. So 40 up to 150 is a pretty wide range, but it's not that easy of a book to find. And not that many graded, as you can see here, with only 2 9.8s in the census. 2 people did get it, but that's it. Just 2. Now, with all that said, I've got one more book to cover for us today. And that final book, kind of in that same late 80s, 90s run, cartoon era, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. No, not the original Mirage run, but this is the Archie Adventure series that came out afterwards. This is the one that was more based off of the cartoon that eventually came to a close with issue 72. And yes, the early years, they decided to throw it back, part 2 of 2. But at the end of the Archie run at issue 72, this book does pretty well for itself. So average sales, about $100 for this one, if you could find one out there. So remember the cover, remember the number 72. Again, it's not like a round number or special anniversary type number. It's just number 72. That's when it ended. That's when they called it quits. And average listings for this, while sales are about 100, listings are looking for $100 to $200 raw right now. Once again, could be a good book if you can find this for a cheap price. And not that many graded on this one either, as there are only 15 9.8s. I would have expected more for a classic book like that. I mean, it is Turtles after all. Yes, it's the last issue. It's the Archie run. But that said, 15 is still an interesting number. And that's all I got for you today for our last to know. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you found it entertaining. Hopefully I didn't have it too I wasn't too off base or too distracted by the beeping that went off while filming this. But like I said, I still had to get it done. I still wanted to get it done and get it out this week as I try to get to more of a normalized schedule to try to get this extra content out to you guys. So hopefully you're enjoying that. But until next time, I still got a few more of these planned. I've got some of the other shows planned out for more books to kind of cover and tell you to keep an eye out for it when you're out there in the wild doing your comic hunting. Just some stuff to keep an eye out for. So hopefully you find this interesting. Hopefully you find it informative. And like I said, you can tell me what you think in the comments down below. Make suggestions, make recommendations. And yeah, we'll keep going on this journey together down the line. And with that said, I'll see you all later with some more content. All right.